Hey everyone, this is David Safransky, your host of Financial Revelations, coming to you from snowy Avon, Ohio. Of course, I probably look a lot thinner to you right now because my wife is out of town, so I'm cooking for myself. So I'm trying to eat healthy. I want to let you know. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be okay, but if anybody wants to send a frozen casserole to the office, I'm not going to discourage it. Nothing tuna-based, okay? No tuna. Can't have tuna in the office. So, of course, you can reach us at any time, 1-800-344-2534. We're on WCRF 103.3 every Thursday morning from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. You can hear us on their app if you want. You can email questions to Corey, K-O-R-Y, at EPSF.com. And all of that's running below me. And I want you to reach out to us. I want to answer your questions. In fact, today I'm going to answer a couple of bond questions because bonds, of course, are still in the news and they're going to be in the news for quite some time. If you want to donate to the mission trip that we're going to do in June, and I want to thank everybody who is donating. You know, these donations show up and I get notified like 3 weeks later. So I don't want to minimize what people are giving. Any amount helps. You can go to nativosusa.org, and I'm going to put up some video there of the trip we just took in November so you could see how low the river is. It's incredible how low it is. It's already rainy season there, so it's starting to rise again. But it was really kind of cool to see this. Lowest it's been in 100 years. Now, don't get freaked out by that because 100 years ago, when there was no climate change, there was no global warming, there was none of that lie that's going on, it was this low 100 years ago. So whenever they say it hasn't been this low in 100 years, it disproves climate change in that statement. Because 100 years ago it was this low and none of that junk existed. And by the way, none of that junk exists today. CO2 is not the problem. It's only 0.4% of the atmosphere. But you know, if you raise your taxes and send a bunch of money to the leaders at the World Economic Forum, they're going to find a way to lower the temperature. It's a bunch of hooey, so don't believe it. So we're still fundraising for that trip. We take the money that you give and it goes 100% to the well. So either we're taking people who can't afford to go because they're pastors or worship leaders or somebody like that, or we're taking a young person who can't afford to go. And I was talking to my wife in Florida the other day, and I said, you know, I love being able to do this because it's really hard to get people excited about mission trip in general, but to get a young person excited, I love having the opportunity to do that. So thank you to all who have given. Listener questions about bonds. Are bonds still a good option? Are they still a good deal? And the answer is yes. The 10-year Treasury is above 4% again, and it's probably going to 4.25%, 4.33%. It's better the higher the yield, that's where you want to buy. Okay, so the highest yield you want to buy as long as they're not too aggressive. So government bonds, a year and less, are the best deal right now. And the 10-year bond is just above 4. At the recording of this, I just bought a bond for 3 months. It was 5.28%, I think, 5.228. That comes due in 3 months. That's a pretty good deal. You could also get a money market that pays 5.4%, but it's fully taxable. So if you own an IRA, if you're in an IRA and you're looking for a bond, it might be a good idea short term just to do the money market right now, because you're getting a little bit more yield and you get to keep it all because in an IRA. So whether it's a Roth or a regular IRA, doesn't really matter. You get to keep it all. If you're in a taxable account, you might want to look at a short-term government bond because you do get some tax preference on that. So yes, bonds are still a good option. And I think, you know, the Fed came out yesterday. It wasn't Chair Powell, but it was one of his surrogates came out and said, I think the market's overthinking rate cuts this year. And I've been saying this all along. There is not going to be 8 or 7 or 6 rate cuts this year. There's probably going to be 2, 3 max. And I think it's on the tail end of the year. So think about what has to happen for rate cuts to occur. and that is the economy has to get pretty far south. And, we're not near that right now. I do think the economy is slowing down, but inflation's still running hot. And this is kind of the misnomer on inflation. So last year, 2023, we had 9% inflation coming out of 2022, going into 2023. Inflation was really high. And yes, the rate of growth in inflation has slowed to like 3.4%. But these costs are still astronomically high. Rent, food, gas, healthcare. Think of the things that you spend money on every day. They're inflated. So food is like 20% higher than it was when the Biden administration took office. 20% higher. So some people are thinking that we're going to get deflation and we're going to go back to those prices. That isn't happening. All the Fed really cares about now is the rate of growth. Well, it's a little bit of a misnomer because I think we need to actually deflate a little bit. And to get there, we're going to have to go into recession. The Fed's trying to avoid a recession, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. So think about what's going on this year. You've got an election year, for one thing. Always kind of a rocky economy in an election year. Of course, the administration wants the Fed to cut rates and they want to spend money. And they've got a Republican Congress. They've got a Republican House that they're not going to get the money to spend that they want to spend. And I think you're going to get an impeachment trial for the president. It's going to be rocky. So I think you're going to see a slowdown at some point in time. And we're kind of in the midst of that happening. So yes, bonds are still a good deal. The shorter the term, the better the deal. Take what Bill Belichick used to say, we're going to take what the defense gives us. Bill Belichick was such a bad coach that Cleveland had to fire him. What if Cleveland had just kept him and had patience? He was right about Bernie Kosar. He was right. Look at what he did he was so successful. He's going to go someplace and do it all over again, most likely. But his mantra was always take what the defense gives you. So if the defense is giving you a short-term bond right now, just take it. And don't fight the trend. You can't fight the Fed and don't fight the trend. So I'm buying short-term bonds right now. I haven't bought a lot of corporate bonds, but that's coming. So the second question is, why are bonds earning less the longer you hold them? So a 1-year bond is earning more than a 10-year bond. That's called an inverted yield curve, and it's not a good sign. Now, in all fairness, the yield curve has been inverted for more than a year, where you're earning less interest on a 10-year bond. So you're getting 4% on a 10-year bond. On a 1-year bond, you're getting 5.228 is what I bought. I bought a 3-month bond for 5.228 today. Well, it shouldn't be that way. A normal yield curve is you earn 3% on a 1-year bond. You earn 3.5 on a 2-year bond. You earn, on a 3-year bond or a 4-year bond, you're earning more than that. On a 5-year bond, you're earning more. On a 10-year bond, you're earning more. On a 30-year bond, you're getting higher interest. It's not like that right now. At some point, it's going to get back to that, probably when the Fed starts cutting rates. We will get back to that. But until then, you got to take what the defense gives you, and that's a short-term bond. And that inverted yield curve is a recession tell. The market still thinks we're going into recession. Now, I want to give you a visual, and we've done this before here, and Corey will probably put up a visual of a teeter-totter. So on a teeter-totter, on a bond teeter-totter, you have interest rates on one side, and you have bond values on the other. Now, remember, whoever was heaviest as a kid, now I'm 45-ish, so when I was a kid, we had playgrounds that we would go out and play on. I don't know, do kids still do that, Corey? Do they go on play? Do they have slides on playgrounds? No, those really tall slides that kids would fall off? They don't have those anymore. Our kids have been made so weak. Get a cut and bleed out a little bit, you little baby. Well, kids did get hurt on those slides if they fell off, so I understand that. But on the teeter-totter, whoever was the heaviest kid was on the bottom. And then, so right now what we got little higher yields, and we got bond values depressed. When yields come down, bond values go up. So you want to buy, even right now, I'm not against all bond mutual funds. because it's a great way to kind of capture these slightly higher yields. And I think they are going to come down later in the year, and there's going to be some value there. So I'm not against buying mutual funds for the first time in a long time. And you could consider those things, especially a high yield bond fund. When those yields come down, when the Federal Reserve starts cutting rates later in the year, values are going to come up. You're going to make a lot of money there. You get not only the yield, but you get some capital gain on the bond prices. Not a bad idea right now, so I'm all for it. So those are the questions from listeners. Now listen, I want you to send us questions. I want to hear what you're thinking. Send us personal questions. We're not going to say, oh, by the way, Joey Tentpeg from Chardon asked this question. No, we're just going to ask it in a general way so we don't out you or something like that, because if you have the question, other people have the question. So I love those questions. The last question we're going to answer from listeners is the market. What am I looking at? What has changed? I'll tell you one thing that has changed. Well, the market's been rocky to start the year. That's not totally unexpected because we had a really strong finish. And so you think about this. If I sell out for somebody that they have a huge gain on, and we haven't offset it with losses, if I do that at the end of the year, they got to come up with the tax bill April 15th. If I sell it 5 days later in the new year, we have 16 months to come up with a tax bill, and that's way more palatable to most people. So that's what we do. We're selling a little bit. We're taking some gains off the top. The market's been a little rocky. I think it's going to turn around. I know it's an election year. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, most likely, for the Republicans. And that's going to create an amount of heat in the market that is unique. It just is. I could see a little bit of social unrest. I mean, remember 2019, the summer of 2019, with the BLM riots, where they were mostly peaceful. They weren't peaceful at all, taking over city blocks, burning down government buildings, firebombing police cars. That's not peaceful to me. So you could get a little bit more of that, and that does affect the markets. There's no doubt about it. But here's what I'm looking at. You know, healthcare is back on the radar. It started kind of last year because of these GLP-1 inhibitors like Mounjaro, and there's some others out there where even Oprah is doing this now. Oprah's skinny again. And why is it? Because she's taking Mounjaro. And that's an injection that you take, and it just helps you lose weight. It kills cravings for food. It lowers your sugar. So it does a lot of things. Now, there's some side effects to it that we have to be aware of. And I think we're going to see some more of these as time goes on. But healthcare is definitely back on the radar. I still love tech. The AI revolution is very, very real. I'm hearing people talk about it like it is akin to 1995 when the internet was getting widespread. In 1991, I was driving in my car, and I was listening to Rush Limbaugh because I was a good conservative even then. And he's talking about surfing the web. I'm like, this dude weighs like 300 pounds. He's not surfing anything. It was the internet. It was really the kind of like the genesis of the internet right then. And a lot of people are talking about the AI revolution being very similar to that, how we're going to have applications of AI that we haven't even been thinking of yet. There's this liberal economist, Paul Kruger, who said, I don't think the internet's going to amount to much. He still has yet to be right about anything. That was a long time ago. Anything that benefits from a Republican administration, I'm interested in, because I think you're going to get a Republican administration. Now, I don't know who exactly it's going to be, but the Biden administration doesn't really have a lot to run on. Are they going to run on inflation? I don't think so. Are they going to run on the wars that have been created since they took office? I don't think so. So these things they can't run on the border. The border's a mess, and it happens to be the number one thing that's coming out of some of these primaries in the Republican race are the border. And so it's going to be tough to run on their record. The other thing that I'm looking at, again, significantly is finance. Anything in finance. Those companies tend to benefit under a Republican administration. One of the things that I'm looking away from is electrification. Now, that's not only because of a Republican administration that I think is coming, but it's also because companies like Toyota are moving away from EVs and going back to hybrid. They're going to try and perfect the hybrid and get 90 miles a gallon out of a hybrid. And that would solve a lot of problems. And it happens to be a very efficient thing to do. Look, we're going to be using oil and coal and natural gas for a long time. So these people that are really, they're kind of eco-terrorists. Their God is Mother Earth. They don't have religion, so they got to believe in something, so it's Mother Earth. And they've got it 100% wrong, because cheap, reliable, and renewable energy is what drives economies. It's what creates booming economies. It's what gives people from poor countries a chance to participate in the world economy. And electrification is very, very expensive. It's really kind of a rich man's problem. So I was watching the World Economic Forum, which is the biggest. Javier Milei, who is the new president of Argentina, he should be our poster child for how government should be run. He got elected and he laid off 50% of the government. We should do that here. We should send them to the private sector and survive like everybody else does. You know, you get into the government work and you're there for like the next 150 years, whether you're alive or not. Well, that's basically, Argentina is a socialist nation. Well, it was. He's going to right that ship, and he could do it. He's doing it right now. Well, he went to the World Economic Forum and told them they're the problem, and they are. At the World Economic Forum last year, I watched an interview where they were saying, well, you know, most people, rich people who can pay for carbon offsets are going to be able to fly and vacation, but most poor people are going to vacation with VR goggles. That's where they're headed. That's what they're going to do to you. And by the way, you're the carbon footprint that they want to eliminate. Don't let this stuff happen. Fight against the World Economic Forum. Fight against a central bank digital currency. Fight against these eco-terrorists that want to shut down oil and gas drilling. They're insane. And they're wealthy, so they're still going to live a lifestyle that they love. You're not going to be able to go on a cruise. You're not going to be able to travel to the Virgin Islands. You're going to do it with VR goggles. That's where they want to put you, and this is malarkey. Don't let it happen. Fight against it. Fight for capitalism, free markets, doing what you want. Fight for cheap, renewable, and reliable energy like coal, natural gas. Also, we need to explore more nuclear options. So if we get a Republican president, I fully expect them to start re-energizing, no pun intended, nuclear power. We should be doing those things. These things are where we should be going. That's how you make an economy boom. So I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and the voice you can trust.